covering everything that you need to know in talent experience.
People applying for new positions, it's like the cherry on top.
With the technology to attract talent.
Recruiters always know their best talent.
The AI just wants to use that information.
Inclusion efforts across the organization.
Tell me what it's like to work through associate story.
Interviews with leaders in the industry. Talk about what's new in HR tech. What are the hot topics? We're here every week, folks. Weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR. Hello and welcome everyone to Talent Experience Live. This is, as I like to say, it's a bold statement. I know, the greatest show on the internet. I like bold statements. This is the place to be every week if you are a recruiter, a sourcer, a talent marketer, or a manager of people, a manager of teams. I'm your host, Tom Tates. I'm on the marketing team here at Phenom. And if you're just joining us for the first time, we go live every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Be sure to like, subscribe, get notified so you never miss a beat. You can follow us on your platform of choice. Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the team here at Phenom. If you're not familiar with Phenom, our purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job. That's not a typo. It's a true billion. We are well on our way. We can't do it without our amazing community. So if you're joining us, thank you. You're a part of our community. We wouldn't be here without you. Our Talent Experience platform helps candidates find the right fit faster. It helps employees evolve into their current role and beyond. It helps recruiters achieve some of that next level productivity and efficiency. And it helps managers build better teams with data, analytics, and automation. All of this is powered by super slick artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can head on over to phenom.com if you want to learn more, if you're interested. We love talking about this stuff. Let me know who you are in the chat, where you're from, what you do. Talent Experience Live is for you. We really like to help connect folks. So let us know. This is an awesome opportunity to network. You know, maybe you're looking to meet somebody who's a like-minded peer. Maybe you need support somewhere, right? So get to know each other, connect, and it's awesome. I always like to say I have the pleasure and benefit of working for the internet, right? Because I get to connect with people all across the globe. So it's super exciting to do opportunities like this. So let me know who you are and where you're from. And I'd love to see you in the chat. Our awesome guest today is going to be a great opportunity to ask questions too. So be interactive. You know, this isn't just us talking to each other. You can interact with us too. We love that. And today's episode is all about creating a culture of good, right? Creating a culture of good. So for today's icebreaker question, we wanted to kind of recognize that tomorrow, April 22nd, is Earth Day, right? And I think we can all agree that the planet needs us to practice a little bit of good, right? And a little bit of environmental mindfulness. So the question today is, what is something good that you have done or that you are doing for the environment, right? What is something good that you have done or you are doing for the environment? If you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, feel free to chime in. Let me know. Our guest George is already in the chat. George is already in LinkedIn. He's chatting with y'all, and he's from Nashville. So where are you joining in from? And what is something that something good that you have done or are doing for the environment? We were just chatting backstage kind of beforehand, and I felt a little bad because I haven't done too much, right? I'm an avid recycler, right? So I do some recycling. But the one thing that I have done recently that I'm proud of is got rid of the old inefficient gas-powered lawnmower, right? And I traded that in for something that's battery-powered, right? Electric. So I'm excited about that. I'll be revving that up this season. You'll catch me out back, right? Revving up my gas or my electric-powered lawnmower. Sarah's joining us from Philadelphia, PA. Sarah, welcome. Excited to see you here as well. So let us know what you're doing for the environment. In today's episode, we have an amazing guest. He will dive into things that we can do to create a culture of good, not just for the environment, but for our workplace, right? And for our teams and our people. And, one thing that has always been at the heart of many organizations is purpose, right? And purpose-driven, socially conscious organizations are on the rise. You hear about this all the time, and it's been a continuing conversation over the past couple of years. It isn't enough to make a profit anymore, right? People over profits, right? People over profits. Increasingly, companies are looking to do good in their communities and for their employees. And you're seeing more emphasis on a company's purpose, their social commitment, their sustainability efforts. And it's no longer just about what we do. but the why that's behind it, right? And our guest, George Rogers, who's going to be joining us, he's going to help us imagine what our world would be like and could be like if all employees were given the permission. I love that word, permission. I'm going to dig into that with George. The permission to care about not just their jobs, but also their fellow employees, their customers, and the cause that they are most passionate about in life. Or to put that in another way, what would happen if people were given the chance to bring their soul to work with them, right? I love this topic. George is joining us from an organization that he's a strategic partner for called the Culture of Good, which aims to show other companies that inspired employees can ignite positive change in the world and impact your bottom line positively. The belief is that when companies give their employees permission, there's that word again, permission to care, right? They create a movement of people who share their value for social responsibility and purpose. So without any further ado, let's bring George onto today's episode. George, welcome to today's show. How are you?
Oh man, I'm great. I love the music. Sometimes, the music is everything. I like the intro music, man. That was great.
We have an amazing video team here, and they never fail to come up with the best, music selections. It always fits the tone perfectly. And I love the Town Experience Live music because it always kind of gets me, no matter what kind of Thursday morning I was having, by the time noon rolls around, like when that music starts pumping, like it gets me in the right state of mind, to have these conversations. So I second that. I really agree. George, I have to ask you, it's kind of tradition here. I have to ask you the icebreaker question. So tell me about something that you have done or are doing that is creating, a culture of good for our environment.
Funny thing is I recently just moved from Georgia. So I live in Alpharetta, Georgia, just moved here in Nashville. A good friend of mine, Rob McDaniel, owns a company, surprisingly, a recycling company. So I've been working here. This is a different industry. It's part of the wireless, but we do a lot of electronic e-waste disposal from medical equipment with hospitals. We work with some of your top medical systems and health systems. We work with a lot of large banking financial institutions. So we do a lot of e-waste disposal. We have a logistic team that goes to a lot of our clients. We pack, we load. We got about 6 trucks. I believe we got 4 drivers out today that's going to be picking up all the way from North Carolina, clients to Colorado, down to Florida. So we're in 39 states. Every week we're visiting, picking up clients, and properly disposing e-waste. And so here at S3 Recycling Solutions here in Nashville, Tennessee, it's a daily thing that we do, and we take pride in, and keeping everything, 100% everything that we get, it stays out of the landfills. And so that's something that we pride ourselves on in security, sustainability, and stewardship.
That's critical. I mean, we are a consumer culture, right? We consume, we are upgrading our technology every year or two, it seems, right? Our cell phones, our laptops. So that is a critical thing that you're doing. So that is awesome. Love to hear it. Before we get too deep into the conversation, we were introduced to George here at Phenom from our good friend, mutual friend, Ben Eubanks, who's a friend of the show. He's been on the show before. And you were a keynote speaker. You opened up one of his HR summer school days, which was awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned in the chat, but I did want to get to know kind of where you're at. Where are you from? So you're tuning in from Nashville, but tell us about the origin story. Let's get into the origin story of
right.
George.
So yeah, I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born and raised there. Graduated from the great school of Ben Davis High. I'm a Ben Davis alumni high. It is now the university. So they do university classes. Oh, cool. My graduating class was over 1,100 students. My last name is an R. So just think about the patience my last day at that school taught me. I lived there for several years. Out of high school, I was real passionate about sports. And at an early age, I was adopted. And so I kind of, left my dream to fulfill what then was, my purpose and destiny, and did 14 years in ministry. So I was a youth pastor for 10 years. The last 4 years, I was in stress pastor is what I call it. They say senior pastor or lead pastor. I call it stress pastor. And I did that for a total of 14 years. And a good friend of mine is Kyle Wainwright. He broke his phone. So this is what got me out of ministry into the wireless industry. He broke his phone in a small town of Engel, Indiana. And from there, got into the wireless industry. Ended up partnering with some great friends out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We started a phone repair business called Genius Phone Repair. Went from 3 to 18 locations in a little over 3 years, from Indiana and Michigan. And then we sold that in 2018 and got out of it. I wanted to just kind of help and give back, and partnered with Culture Good. A good friend of mine is my mentor, my best friend, Ryan McCarty. We kind of have similar stories. And I met him when I was 11. He was in ministry as well, got into the corporate world. So we both come from the nonprofit to the corporate. And really, that's kind of the heartbeat behind Culture Good and what I'm about today. But from the very beginning, I've always been people-focused, people-centric. I love people, love encouraging. I've always had an empathy and compassion for people. And a lot of that obviously roots from, being a pastor as well. And so I spent several years from 2018 to 2020 really coaching and consulting with small businesses and large businesses and really helping them bring culture good and do good in their team and in their community. And then here I am, a good friend, called me up in November. I saw him at a conference and moved me to good old Nashville, Tennessee.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing folks talk about their journey, their unique journey. One of the things that it's always interesting to me, because we have a lot of guests who had very different paths in life, right? They started out as educators, teachers. They, in your case, starting out in ministry, and it's like when you bring that journey to your work and bring what made you so successful there over here, like that's where the magic starts to happen, right? And I think we'll get into that a little bit, but one thing I wanted to share, last week we had a guest. Her name is Sarah Elkins. She runs the digital strategy at a company called Shaker, which is a recruitment marketing company. And she was talking about recruitment marketing, but she was talking about how important it was to have an attraction strategy and a conversion strategy in place before you start spending money on campaigns. Because she said, if you don't have that in place, you might as well just write me a check and I'll go buy shoes. And as soon as she said that, I thought of George Rogers. I was like, George,
my type of friend.
Yeah, he would definitely be in good company here, right? So I know that you have a passion for shoes, and I wanted to ask you about that. Is it still alive? Has it dwindled a bit? Because I know those types of passions can be a little bit expensive too.
Yeah. So the passion is still there. What I like to say is, I'm still devoted to it, but I'm more disciplined, right? And so, gotcha. One of my, I'll show this pair, but this is kind of my passion for shoes. This is kind of a mellow concept, and this version is an Air Max concept. And so this version is inspired by the Summer of Love and an iconic music festival that moved culture. And so this is one of my newer pair of shoes. I actually bought it because it's that fur and actually has some shoelaces with it. So yeah, I love shoes. I have over a few pairs of shoes. I don't want I want to be judged. I have a lot of shoes that can compete with a lot of other gentlemen and ladies out there. But yeah, I love shoes for me, and fun socks. Those are my two. If I'm buying something, it's probably going to be shoes or socks.
Yeah. I love the floral pattern. It kind of reminds me of the old De La Soul kind of artwork.
My favorite part of these is, and this is my second time wearing these, I love that cow print. And if you can feel these shoes, it feels like the texture. So everything is a piece of something. Obviously the jeans, and then the thread. If you can, people think that, hey, your shoes are threaded, and it's purposely threaded like that for the struggle. It's a representation of a lot of phases of life.
So if you're just joining us on Talent Experience Live, Patrizia chimes in, love those shoes, George Rogers, and no judgment here. If you're just joining us, George Rogers and we're going to be talking about shoes for the next 25 minutes.
Yes.
And De La Soul. But no, all joking aside. So love it. Love it. Love the passion there too. I was going to ask you about your sock game as well too, because we have a coworker, Andy, who was talking about his shoe game and how important it is to kind of match the socks on occasion too. Awesome. So, you jumped into your origin story. You let us know kind of where you came from. Obviously you did that in a very abridged version, and you probably could have dove a little bit deeper too. Right. But Now you're working with Culture of Good, right? And can you tell us a little bit about, who Culture of Good is and kind of what your mission is right now?
Yeah, so I mean, our main mission and really kind of our heartbeat behind Culture Good started, just to kind of give a brief of the start, it actually was part of Verizon TCC. And so Ryan McCarty and Scott Moorhead, the CEO of Verizon TCC, really wanted to bring a dynamic and really connect the team and their teammates into who we are as a business. And so our vision is for Culture of Good to be co-branded for businesses to use as a method of recruiting. So potential hires know, what kind of culture you live in before that first interview. We wanted to be embedded and be in the heartbeat. And so, and I'll add that primarily what we do is certify culture champions. So the dynamic has changed a little bit, and we really partner with companies and businesses that really want to change the dynamic of their company's culture. That impacts a lot, right? The culture of your company impacts sales. It impacts the stability of your team and employees and recruiting and hiring. So we really primarily focus on certifying culture champions in our process that can lead an effort of their business. And we provide the tools, the training, the ongoing support to each champion. And really challenge people to go from chancing their culture to really champion their culture. Because at the end of the day, champions train, losers kind of complain. Yep. And so that's the mentality, really, a culture of good to really enhance and empower and that fulfillment with your team.
Yeah, I really like that you had mentioned too that it impacts sales, right? And it impacts everything, right? And I think that we lose that sometimes. Like I think in HR, culture sometimes feels like a bolt-on thing, and it's HR driven sometimes, right? And it's by HR for HR, but I don't think that all organizations realize the impact that it has, right? Yeah. People don't buy from people that they don't know, like, and trust, right? Yeah. People buy from people, and they have to have that connection, and culture is oftentimes that like connective fiber, that pulls people together, not just in the organization, but when you're working with partners and when you're working with clients, and prospective clients too. So I love that you mentioned that. We've said culture between the two of us. We've said culture probably 25, 30 times already, right?
Culture.
And right, culture, right? It's the magic word, but it's also I think of like Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee's Playhouse. You say culture, and everyone like freaks out. It's the word of the day. It's a fuzzy word, right? I think we can admit that it's a fuzzy word. It means a lot of different things to different people, right? So when I say culture, I might have a certain perspective of what that means. When you say culture, you might have a certain perspective of what that means. So when you're talking about culture with clients and with audiences that you address, I know you frequently do keynote talks. What's in your mind? How do you define culture within the workplace? Like what's your kind of go-to explanation, right, of what it is?
Yeah, I love this question, and I love it more when I get to ask that question of the people to truly figure out what do they believe culture is. For me, and what I believe culture is how most people feel, believe, and behave most of the time, right? And so if I go into a company and I want to, figure out how is this company culture, and I'm going into these companies, I'm not reading a sign that's on the back of your wall or that's in your foyer that says our company core values and culture is. It's not about your website. People experience your company's soul through its culture, right? And culture is both the greatest advantage, but it's also the greatest risk if it's not healthy. And so how do people feel on your team and in your company? How do they believe? What do they believe? Do they believe the mission? Do they believe the core values? Because oftentimes you'll have that small percentage of people that says, man, I've heard this, you get that boss that always adds a new initiative or a new program and we're excited about it. And after a while, you lose that excitement because the first 3 or 4 never came to pass. And so my belief is that this is just another thing that we're going to start that's not going to come to fruition. And so how do your people feel? How do they believe? And when you're not around as a leader, how do they behave? Does their demeanor change? Does their work ethic change because you're not around? Do they get lazy and complacent? Most of the time, that to me is really how you define the culture of a company.
Yeah, it's such an awesome answer. For all of those who are joining, we did have technical issues. We had technical issues on LinkedIn, but we're back up and running now. So if you're tuning in on LinkedIn or YouTube, shout out in the chat and let us know, what does culture mean to you, right? I'd love to hear from the audience and kind of hear what is your definition of culture, and what does that mean to you? I love this idea of how it ties into behaviors. Specifically, it's not just words on a wall. I've worked for other organizations before Phenom where you had a culture book, right, or you had core values or something, and it just ends up being plastered on the wall somewhere. But that's as far as it went, right? It didn't influence your behaviors. It wasn't at the forefront. And I just love this idea of making sure that it does sit at the soul of the organization, which is another concept that we don't really talk about as frequently as we should, right? Like, what is the soul of your organization? As leaders, right, at an organization, what are some of the steps that we can take, right, to start creating that environment? So when you step into a client scenario, George, where it's a mess, right? There's no cultural identity. Soul is a 4-letter word that no one talks about. When you step into that environment, what are some of the first steps that you start to think about, to help them establish a path forward?
Right. So some of the things I feel like is important is really knowing how to define. Number one, we talk about leadership. What is leadership?
Sure.
And especially in the HR space and in the C-level, leadership. Some of the things that we don't do enough, and some companies are moving towards that. I think over the last year or two, especially during the pandemic, it's kind of forced us to be more human, right? We finally are getting human back into human resources, and we're living and loving, which is a word that a lot of people don't use in the workplace, right? If I was to ever come into your company and or work with your team, you're going to hear the word love from me, because I believe that's what makes the world go around. As much as we all get into entrepreneurship, or we got a job or a career, or we're pursuing those things, and ultimately our greatest ROI is to make sure every week or every other week that paycheck gets deposited into our account. The truth of the matter is that leadership is an example of love, grace, and trust, right? Those are true characteristics of leadership. Loving yourself, number one. And so as a leader, I have to first lead myself. And so I challenge people to lead the life you love. And that starts with self-leadership. Before I can lead you, I must first be able to guide and lead myself. And how do I do that? I got to love myself. I got to show grace to myself. It's so easy to trust and give grace and love people, but it's so difficult for us to be human at times and take the title down, because titles are something that's given and can be taken away, believe it or not, depending on which side of the table you're on. But at the end of the day, we're all human. And so we have to be able to really put the soul in that. And that's leadership. That's the love. That's the grace. That's the caring for people and having empathy and compassion.
Yeah. How can you inspire if you're not already also inspired, right? How can you help others find meaning if you haven't already,
Exactly.
found meaning yourself? So I love that idea of starting with yourself first, as a leader.
Yeah, and that brings out the soul, right? So when we
Yeah.
talk about leadership, it's love, grace, trust. When we talk about the soul of a person, the soul of a person is the realest sense of George, right? My soul is who is George? That's the soul. When your mind and your heart are one, and bringing that to the workplace is so vital. And it starts with leadership.
I kind of want a George Rogers line of sneakers that says love, grace, trust. Like, I feel like that would be something that I would absolutely wear, as a daily reminder of how critical it is, right? To embody that, not just professionally, right, but personally too. That really helps you bring your best self to your family, best self to your teams. I would love that. So maybe one day.
They're only $150. It takes about 60 days to come ship to you. But love, grace, trust, man. The shoes are out there, Nikes.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, let's do it.
Our Chucks.
That'd be awesome. Cool. So I love that answer. Redefining what leadership means. And making sure we're all on the same page there. Incredibly critical. From the employee's perspective, right? One of the things that we've found in the workplace today, and we talk about this a lot on Talent Experience Live, the Great Resignation, the Big Quit. There's all these buzzwords that have been, looming over the employee's experience for the past year or so, right? And people want to work on their own terms now, right? They don't want to do a job that they hate, and they're finally starting to express agency and saying, I don't want to do this anymore, right? And I don't want to do this for you on your terms. I want to do things on my terms, and we're starting to see that a ton, obviously, and you see it in the news too. For folks who have not left their jobs, who have not resigned, burnout is another topic, rampant throughout the workforce. People are feeling burnout. The pandemic has certainly contributed to this a ton, a lot of uncertainty, waves coming and going, stress. I would say that many employees are operating in like a culture of meh, versus a culture of good. So for employees who are in that environment, what do you recommend at the employee level? Like maybe you don't have leadership who's bought in, do you start to sow the seeds at your own organization? Do you start with yourself? Like what are your thoughts on where the employee can start if they're in a not so great culture?
It's to build a culture of good, to enhance your culture. Unfortunately, leadership is essential, right? Any culture initiative not supported and driven by leaders reveals a lack of priority within that organization. When I see that, for me personally, I'm not telling everybody to do this, but if I have that, I run. It's an allergic reaction. I start itching and I can't talk, and I usually leave. Those leading employee engagement, community impact, culture change, that is so important. But for employees to support and really bring a contribution to that culture, really identify a community impact that they can commit to, right? Part of culture good is doing good, not just internally within the workplace, but it's really about how can I impact those around me, clients and customers in our world, right? And so they can commit to doing good together with a quarterly process. And how it's broken down for us when we go into companies, we have a big good, our good, and my good. All employees are engaged in a community impact project on the same day. For instance, TCC, Verizon, every July, August, we do a big good. Our big good for Verizon TCC is that we gather backpacks for everybody, right? Awesome. And so every quarter, our good is a team, is a department. So let's say, hey, we're both in sales. Our sales team for our company will say, hey, we're our regional group. We'll work together on a community impact project. And it could be, hey, we all love animals. Let's give our time to the animal community, or a place that needs help and support, hands-on. And then through my good, this is where individual employees come in, is that individuals or members in your business are provided really with resources to maximize. So for us, that can impact and bring an impact to their local community based on their passion. So go down, George, what are you really passionate about? I will say, man, I want to give back to a younger generation. I had a man who I did not like, I had a disdain for, that loved me when I was 8 years old, brought me into his family, and brought a young Black kid from the inner city who was surrounded by drugs and violence into his home with two young daughters that did not look like them, right? And came from a different place. And so my heart and passion is to give back to that next generation, to love that next person that could be a George Rogers, that can go from a road to destruction and, may not be alive this day if it was not for my father, Tim McNamee. And so I want to give back to the local Boys and Girls Club and mentor a kid, every quarter. That's my time to give back. And so the process is simple. And then when you think about business, it's scalable. And then providing a framework for implementation is so simple to really be able to give back. And so really saying, hey, what can I do to give back? It's really impacting those around you. And then the community is the best thing.
Yeah, I love that. We have some comments too coming through. Medina writes, I definitely want a job where my voice is heard and I have ownership in my work. Absolutely, 100%. More and more, like we do hear about needing to feel connected to the purpose, right? The purpose of the organization. And that can't just be profits, right? And when it is just profits, you're just a cog in the wheel. And I think that, everything you're describing, George, it is simple and it is scalable. And it does lead to that connection. We have another great question that came through too. It's kind of a two-parter, but Amy wrote in. So Amy is actively looking for work, applying for positions at different companies. And how can companies show their culture through their hiring practices. And her second comment here, how do companies align their job descriptions to their values, culture? How are their interview practices aligned? And I'm curious, George, from your end, working with clients and really diving deep into how to improve the culture, create the culture of good, inspire not just employees, but future employees. Are there any tactics or are there any strategies that you've discovered or that you've seen that work really well with this?
Yeah, I think it's when it comes to recruiters, especially in the HR space, and I challenge people to really hire for soul, not for skill. Because as a company, you should be built, right? You don't want to be built to have to be forced to hire an A+ player. You should have systems and processes in places where you can plug in anyone and you're bringing in the right type of people. I want good character people. I want people with integrity and character. I want people it's not about longevity and loyalty to me or the company, but it's longevity and loyalty to yourself and where you want to be on the growth plan. So I think it's imperative that each individual, be engaged. Culture Good, as it gives employees permission to care about their roles and seamlessly connect doing good and with doing good business. I think for people that are on the side of the table say, I'm looking for work. How can I see that within the workplace? I think what's unique about Culture Good and what's unique about a lot of companies, especially during this pandemic, and what they've learned is that it isn't a top-down approach or a simple base on data gathering from satisfaction surveys. It becomes the way every employee or member describes their culture of their business as they connect. The greatest recruitment, right? The greatest recruitment is word of mouth. It's not what you brand on a poster. It's the team members and employees talking about the company. If you want to see good recruiting that you don't have to post on all these other social medias or sites, it's through the voices of the employees. They're talking about it because of the soul, the company's culture. And then ultimately you attract who you are, right? When your business shares its soul, what is shared in what ways, people are attracted to a business that shares its values, but only when they're backed by their actions. And so you see that through their actions. You see that through the interview process. How do they treat your time? It's one thing for us, we're showing up to an interview to be on time, but it's another thing for them to be prompt and prepared and on time in all phases.
Yeah, great comments coming through as well. Macy says, as a recruiter, I love this, right? Soul over skill always. And I really appreciate it, the importance of word of mouth, right? It's the authenticity, right? You can't fake soul. You can't fake it, and when people try to fake it, you see right through it, right? And I think that it's through the actions, it's through the behaviors. Amy chimes in as well too. This is a controversial topic, but can we get rid of education requirements then? I'm sure for most roles you probably can. For many roles, you probably
I will say
can.
this: I'm the last one to ask.
Me too.
I met Gary Vee in person about 2.5, 3 years ago.
Awesome.
And I didn't go to college. Right. Here I am. I'm sitting as a senior director of business development for a company. I am a entrepreneur, own retail stores in Georgia. I did not go to college, and I barely paid my way. I barely paid my way through high school. That means I had friends that did my homework for me. School wasn't for me. But the educational piece I don't look at because you got a lot of schools, right? And the thing about it, not to down our education system and those who are getting the degrees, I'm all for that if you need to listen. If you're going to be a doctor, please go to school.
I was going to say, I want my doctor to be educated in the right areas for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But I do not believe, it goes back to what I said earlier, a piece of paper and how much time somebody went to study, sometimes you cannot translate that into work ethic. You can't translate that into integrity and character. And that's why it's so important for the soul to be the focus versus the skill. Not saying that having an education is not great, but for me, I can tell you the last few people I've hired over the last year or two, I didn't care what school they graduated from or when or if they did graduate. I wanted to know them personally. I don't ask traditional interview questions. I ask, if you can have any superpower, what would it be? Why am I asking that crazy question? Because I want to know how creative they are and how reaction they can be. I want to know if we were to sit down at a coffee place and I brought out a checkerboard or a chessboard, which would you want to play? When you want to play chess or would you want to play checkers? The reason for that question is not because I want to play games, but it gets to my mentality. Are they strategic? Do they think about the next move? Are they thinking about the move after that? In chess, or are they just kind of quick, easy, and want to get things done and they want to repeat it all over in checkers? And so I ask different types of questions because I want to know the reaction and how they feel, their creativity. I love those type of things. I hate those boring questions on interviews.
Yeah, because even if you have the education requirements, if you have the degrees, the behaviors, the competencies, the characteristics, the integrity, like all of that is so critical, right? And if you're going to ignore that, you're going to run into challenges, not just for you, but for the employee too, right? Because when you hire an employee, you want that employee to be successful, right? Successful and fulfilled. And that employee might be successful, doing requirements, but they might not be fulfilled. And you need to know that, in the process. So I love the idea of really taking into account hiring for soul, not just for skills. I think that's critical, and not everyone thinks about it. Not everyone talks about it. And also it's probably a good message too for job seekers and candidates. Even when that's not solicited, right? Bring your soul to the interview, right? Share more bring more of yourself. Which kind of leads me to a question I wanted to ask you about as well. When you did your HR summer school session with Ben, which was pretty awesome, you talked a lot about feelings, and I think that's really important too. I think, and this is just my work experience, we're wired now to be super professional, right? We're wired to be very professional when we enter work, right? When we get into work mode, maybe you hang all that up at the end of the day, but when we start our day, I think a byproduct of that is we suppress how we feel, right? About work, but about other things too. And how do you feel about that? Like, how do you think that impacts our ability to do what we're saying we need to do, which is bring our soul to work?
I think going back to leadership, and I'll say it this way, when it comes to the feeling portion of it, because everybody's different. If you're around me long enough, you know that I'm a confused person. A lot of people think that I'm an extrovert, and I still call myself an introvert. It just depends. Sure. And when it comes to bringing your soul to work, really, when we say bring your soul to work, what we're saying is what happens when your greatest passion and my greatest contribution collide to make the world a better place, right? That's the heartbeat behind bringing our soul to work. Is what is my passion and my contribution, and in the midst of that feeling of feeling good, knowing that I'm a part of something greater. When it comes to expressing that, there's some people who are extroverts that they can express their feelings very well, both good, bad, and the ugly, right? And then there's some that tend to, I call it the trash can effect. We don't typically empty our trash can until it's about to overflow, and usually in the workplace, our feelings are contained. It's storing a bunch of these things, and it's rarely one big piece of trash. It's typically a lot of pieces, wrappers, paper that we ball up that eventually overflow if we don't take it out. And we treat, a sense, our heart, our mind as a trash can mentality where we just store things and we hold it in until we finally, snap, right? It's not, a lack of something that's going on. It's just a bunch of small things that we never really dealt with. For me, and I just want, if I can get personal, all right? If I get personal,
yeah,
is that cool? So for me, when I grew up with a mom who was an alcoholic and drugs. And at 8 years old, I was surrounded by drugs and violence. And I started at a very young age. And got into the wrong, area. I won't call it a gang. I'll call it a clique or a club. And that's where I met my white father who adopted me and brought me in. And one of the things that he would always say to me growing up, and he was a pastor, which is, kind of where I strived to ended up becoming. But what I loved about Tim and my pops is that he was never Pastor Tim to me. He was Tim. He never showed up to my basketball games to preach to me or force me to go to church. He just showed up, and his simple words was, "I'm here." Till this day, if I call him right now and sporadically, the last thing he'll tell me after he says, "I love you," is, "If you ever need anything, George, I'm here." And that's what people need. from the workplace to, whatever ship you're on, whether it's a relationship, a business ship, a friendship, we need people that will be honest to say, I'm here at the end of the day. In 2016, my life changed. I've been married going on 17 years and no kids. And in 2016, Christmas morning, my birth sister passed away Christmas morning. And I was blessed with a gift of a 2-year-old. I traveled. I have a shoe issue, so I was selfish. And here I am with the 2-year-old who just lost his mom to cancer. And my world changed. And what does all this have to do? It deals with the root of who we are as people. How do we feel? Because how we feel is how we behave, and how we behave is a product of how we think ultimately. And I believe we as leaders, HR, recruiters, the first thing that we have to do is say, Tom, George, what do you love to do? If you want to get somebody to express their feelings, get to know their love language, because everybody's different. You and I can go through the same life, but come out two different scenarios. And we see that all over the news. We see it all over in our own families, where we can say, you got the same mom or dad, and one kid's this way and the other kid's that way. And the root of it is, have we gotten to the core of how they feel? Dexter is now 7 years old, and he's full of passion and energy. He talks about his story to other kids. He has a mom in heaven, and he's special. He gets 2 moms. And every day, every morning I wake him up at 6 o'clock. He's an early bird like I am. He gets ready for school. He's ready to go. And every day before I leave him, the last 2 words that I say to him is, I'm here. Yeah. Because I think it's important for us as leaders to say that to the people that we care about, right? We go back to what I said leadership is, and that's, love, grace, and trust. And I want my team, I want people around me to know that whether it's business or personal, I'm here. And it's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to be human in an HR world and in a business world, to where we care for people, not, for the sake of them bringing us money, right? The business mentality has to change from using people to make money to using money to build people. And that starts with how we handle the feelings of our team and even ourselves.
I love how you and it seems Dexter too are embracing the journey, the peaks and valleys, it's like, and bringing that to everything. Right. And I love that. Like Brent had asked, how can leaders inspire employees to bring this emotion and show what their full potential is? And I think you've already answered this, right? And I love the simplicity of just 2 words, right? I'm here, right? I think that's so powerful. Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad you got personal, George. I mean, and
think about this, Tom. Those 2 words, it can't stop there, right?
For sure. Yeah.
He showed up when he didn't have to. He showed up in bad environments. My dad did, where people and my aunts and my family hated him because of the color of his skin. And so you got to be able to break those walls and not be intimidated as a leader, because it gets rough, man. Sometimes when you say I'm here, that means through hell and high water in every situation. You got to be there. And it's not necessarily always a physical in person, but man, answer the phone call and just shut up and listen.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I know I want to be mindful of time too, but I did have another question as you were talking. It just got me thinking. This concept of, filling the trash can, and really piling that up and not emptying it until it's full or overflowing. George, as a leader, have you ever invited your team members? Have you ever invited, a personal relationship that you've had with one of your employees? Have you ever invited them to empty the trash can, right? Like proactively, not wait, right? And I feel like to Brent's point, how can we inspire employees to bring their full selves to work and to bring emotion to work? Like maybe that's part of it, right? Is inviting them to take out the trash and saying, I'll be here with you, to help you take it out.
Yeah, I think it's transparency. I have a pair of shoes for that as well.
Nice.
I got a pair of shoes that the toe of the shoe is clear, so you can actually see my socks. I always wear fun socks with it. But I think for leaders, we have to be transparent, and what that means is that I have a rule that you got to be careful who you show your butt to. right? BUTT, is because some people use your weaknesses and your mistakes for their, for their good, to tear you down and break you down. But I think it's important to be real, in all honesty. And what does that mean? You use the three F's: the feel, felt, find, right? When they share some things with you, relate to them, not necessarily to say, hey, I've been here and I've done that, or I went through this as well, but I can understand how you feel. I once felt that way, and this is what I found out from my journey. And maybe they can go through those scenarios and say, you know what, George has gone through those things. At S3 here at S3 Recycle Solutions, every Thursday at 10:30, we shut down. We got 75,000 square foot facility. We shut this facility down every Thursday at 10:30, and we huddle up in this warehouse. And myself and our leadership team, we get on the microphone and we ask everybody. We want to know right there in front of everybody what's going on, and we relate to them. We share our stories. Hey, it's been a bad week for me. I've been in a slump. I'm at the burnout wall, or I'm struggling. And we're just natural. We're humans, and I think it's okay to be that way. But you got to be careful who you show your butt to. You got to have those guardrails. Some people can see those things, but at the same time, you can use some of your life example and your story and your journey to share.
Awesome. George, this has been amazing. Thank you for bringing all this to us today. If anybody has any final questions for George, please let us know in the comments. While we're doing that, George, do you have any final thoughts, any parting words that you want to leave the audience with today?
Yeah, I want to challenge people, and if there's any late leaders on here, this Harris poll, I love to share. I'm a stats data guy, and I think about the company. When you're talking about increasing your company culture and really impacting, Harris poll shared this statistic, and it blew my mind. 37% of employees clearly know the company's purpose, right? 20% are enthusiastic about this purpose, and 20% see how they can support the purpose of the company. Then there's 15% that feel like they're enabled to work toward this purpose, while another 20% fully trust the company that employs them to that. And what that translates to is putting it in soccer terms for any soccer mom or dads out there, or if you formerly played. If you look at it from a soccer team of 11 people, what that means is 4 people know which goal they're going towards, and two of the 4 actually care, right? Just think about that. Out of 11 people on your team, we got one thing in mind, and that's to score a goal. 4 of us know which goal we're going towards. Only 2 of us care. 2 know which position they are supposed to be playing on the team. 2 out of 11 know which position they are. 2 players believe that their efforts are on the field actually make a difference, right? Only 2 of the 11. And then there's 8 players would just as likely be rooting for the other team, right? Think about that. How many people on our team are actually rooting or thinking, man, that company over there that's doing the same thing is a lot better than where I am now. How can I jump ship? We talk about the great resignation, and a lot of people, they allow virtual work and at-home work, but we got to be coming back to the office. I'd rather be on that team. Man, it's so important for us to listen to the voice of our people. If there's anything I can leave you with, listen to the voice of your people and do good by them and yourself.
Yeah. Be an active listener. It's funny, as you were describing that analogy, I'm thinking of my 4-year-old daughter's soccer team. She's starting this weekend, but she played last year. That's exactly what it was, right? It was a bunch of, just chickens running around, not really knowing where to go or what to do. And that's not a great working environment, So I think that that is a fantastic way to phrase it. So George Rogers, Culture of Good, where can we find you on the internet? Where can we follow you? Where can we learn more?
Yeah, so you can go to cultureofgood.com. That's our main website if you want to know more. If you send a message and say, hey, George sent me, and we'll get you connected. You can also find me on all social media platforms, TikTok all the way down to LinkedIn. I'm mainly on LinkedIn a lot. And so you can find me on linkedin.com/the George Rogers. The is there, even on my website, the George Rogers. Is because GeorgeRogers.com is taken by a guy on Twitter who's been gaming for about 15, 20 years. So I had to do something. So the George Rogers.
The George Rogers, the one and only. Awesome. So George, this has been amazing. This has been an awesome conversation. So thank you so much for joining. We have Sarah chiming in saying thank you as well too. So this has been great. George, I'd love to have you on a future episode too. So we'll keep in touch, right? We'll keep the conversations going and continue the awesome work that you're doing. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity, and be blessed to everyone out there.
Yeah, take care, George. Thank you.
My pleasure.
My gosh, what an amazing conversation with George Rogers. We, took it in many different directions, but we talked a lot about the actions that we can take at the organizations we're at, whether we're on the employee side, the employer side, or the leadership side. Really, we're all leaders, right? And it's identifying that soul in your organization, finding that purpose, connecting to it. But one of the biggest takeaways that I found too is backing it up, right? Having the behaviors in place, right? And George put it at the very beginning. George put it really well, kind of talking about, what does your team do? What do your people do when you're not around, right? What do they do when you're not around? Because that's the true case. What do you do? What do you do day to day? Do you get complacent, right? Or do you practice the behaviors, the character, the integrity that really connects with the soul and purpose of the organization? So many great takeaways. This is going to be available as a replay. So if you jumped in midway, or if you're, joining towards the end, definitely go back and watch it from the beginning, because there's a lot of good stuff here that you can take away from our conversation with George Rogers. If you are just tuning in for the first time, if this is your first episode, this is Talent Experience Live. We go live every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern time on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Be sure to join us. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat today. We had a nice and active chat, even though we had some technical issues. We had Macy, Amy, Brent, Sarah, Patry, of course. We had Medina join earlier. John Harrington. John says he wants a pair of the George Rogers sneakers. Love, grace, trust. Love it. We want to get those on the shelves for sure. It's been awesome. Shout out to our executive producer, Patrizia Chupa, who's always working behind the scenes to make sure that the shows go smooth, connecting with guests, and really making each show matter. We really try hard to make every guest, every show, every episode matter and meaningful for you. Shout out to Justin Devitz. He's our video producer. He is behind the scenes. He is working through pulling all those knobs and making sure we look good and we don't have any super technical issues. But yeah, thank you to the team here at Phenom. And thank you so much for joining. We'll hope to catch you on the next one.